Number 12, the cost of living becomes unbearable. Sound familiar? Meanwhile, things went bad to worse on Salvation Island. Production was up and bartering had dropped to a minimum. Oliver collected his interest regularly. Money had to be set aside for him. Money tended to agglomerate instead of circulate freely. Those who paid the most taxes complained against those who paid less, and they raised their prices so as to compensate their loss. The less fortunate, who paid no taxes, lamented the high cost of living and bought less. Morale was low. The joy went out of living. No one took an interest in work. Sound familiar? Why should he? Products sold poorly, and when they did sell, taxes had to be collected for Oliver. They did without. Recession hit, and each one accused his neighbor of lacking in virtue and of being the cause for the high cost of living. One day, Harry, sitting in the orchard, pondered over the situation. He finally arrived at the conclusion that this quote-unquote progress, born of the banker's monetary system, had spoiled everything on the island. Unquestionably, all five had their faults, but Oliver's system seemed to bring out the worst in human nature. Harry decided to demonstrate this to his friends and to unite them for action. He started with Jim, who was not hard to convince. I'm no genius, he said, but I have sensed this for a long time. This banker system is more rotten than last year's manure. One by one, they reached the same conclusion, and they decided to have another meeting with Oliver. Number 13, enslaved by Oliver. All hell broke loose at the bankers. Money is scarce on the island, sir, because you take it away from us. We pay you, and you still owe you as much as at the beginning. We work, we improve our land, but find ourselves worse off than the day you arrived. Debts, over all our heads with debts. Now, my friend, let us reason. If your lands have improved, it is thanks to me. A good banking system is a country's best asset. But to benefit from it, you must first have faith in the banker. Come to me as you would a father. Do you want more money? Very well. My barrel of gold is worth many times $1,000. See, I will mortgage your new properties and lend you another 1,000 at this very moment. Twice the amount of debt, twice the interest to pay every year forever. Yes, but I'll lend you more as long as you expand your domain. And all you have to do is pay the interest. You'll lump together your debts. This will be called a consolidated debt, and you can add to your debt year after year, but your income will rise also. Thanks to my loans, you will develop your country. So then the more the island is developed, the more our total debt will increase. As with all civilized countries, the public debt is a measure of a country's prosperity. Number 14, the wolf devours the lamb. Is this what you call sound money, Mr. Oliver? A national debt that has become necessary and unpayable? This is not sound, it is unsound. Gentlemen, all sound money is based on gold, and it comes from the banks in the form of a debt. The national debt is a good thing. It places governments under the wisdom that rests in bankers. As a banker, I am the light of civilization here on your little island. Mr. Oliver, we may be simple, uneducated folks, but we don't want that kind of civilization here. We will not borrow another penny from you. Sound money or not, we don't want to have any further dealings with you. Gentlemen, I deeply regret this ill-advised decision of yours, but if you put an end to our dealing together, just remember that I have your signatures. Reimburse all you owe me, capital and interest. But that's impossible, sir. If we give you all the money on the island, we would still be in your debt. I can't help that. Did you or did you not sign? Yes? Well, then, by virtue of the sanctity of contracts, I hereby seize your mortgaged property as agreed to at the time you were so happy to have my help. If you don't want to serve the supreme authority of money willingly, then you will have to obey it by force. You'll continue to exploit the island, but for my own interest and my own conditions. Now, be on your way. I will give you my orders tomorrow. Number 15, control of the press. Oliver knew that whoever controls the nation's money controls the nation, but he also knew to maintain that control it was necessary to keep the people in a state of ignorance and to distract them by whatever means. Oliver had noticed that 2 of the 5 islanders were conservatives and the 3 were liberals. This showed in their evening conversations, especially since they had become his slaves. Arguments would break out between conservatives and liberals. By the way, this was written in 1936. On different occasions, Harry, less partisan than the others, had suggested to unite the people to exert pressure on the authorities, a dangerous power for any dictatorship. Such a union Oliver could not tolerate. It would mean the end of his rule. No dictator, financial or otherwise, could stand up to a people united and educated. Oliver set out to foster political strife between them. The printing press was put to work, turning out 2 weekly newspapers, The Sun for the liberals and The Star for the conservatives. The Sun argued that if you are no longer in control of your own life, it's because of those treacherous conservatives who have sold out to big business. Well, the Star argued that national debt is due to the liberals, those political daredevils. And the 2 political factions fought it out, while forgetting the one who had laid chains upon them, the money controller, Oliver. Number 16, a priceless bit of information. One day, Tom, the prospector, found a lifeboat that had run aground in a small cove at the end of the island. The lifeboat was empty except for a trunk in good condition lying on the bottom of it. He opened the trunk. Among some clothing and a few other things, something caught his eye. The first book-bound issue of the Michael Journal. He had found a copy of a social credit publication. Curious, Tom sat down and began to read it. His interest grew and his face lit up. And then he cried out, "This is what we should have known all along. Money does not draw its value from gold, but from the products it can buy. Money is a form of accounting. The credits pass from one account to the next according to purchases and sales. The total amount of money being based on the total amount of production. Each time production increases, the amount of money must increase accordingly. Never at any time should interest be paid on new money. Progress is not to be measured by a public debt, but by an equivalent dividend given to each individual. Prices are to be adjusted by purchasing power by a compensated discount, social credit." But Tom could no longer contain himself. He got up and set off to run, book in hand, to share his fantastic discovery with his 4 companions. Money, basic accounting. Tom becomes the teacher. "This," he said, "is what we could have done. Without the banker, without gold, without underwriting contracts. I open an account for each one of you. In the column on the right, you will find the credits. The amount that increase your account to the left are found the debits, which decrease your account. We each wanted $200 to begin with. Upon agreeing, let us write $200 to each credit. Each person now has $200. Frank buys $10 worth of products from Paul. I deduct $10 from Frank's account, leaving him with $190. I added $10 to Paul's account, so now he has $210. Jim buys $8 from Paul. I deduct $8 from Jim's account, blah, blah, blah. Paul buys $15 worth of wood from Frank. I deduct $15 from Paul's account, blah, blah, blah. And so on and so forth, from one account to another, in the same way that banknotes go from one man's pocket to another. If one of us needs money to expand production, we grant him the credit he needs interest-free. He repays the credit once he has sold the products. The same applies to public works. Likewise, each one's account is periodically increased by an additional amount, but without taking anything away from anyone, in order that all the benefit from the progress made by society. That's the national dividend. This way, money becomes an instrument of service." Number 18, the banker's despair. Everyone understood the members of the small community were now social creditors. The following day, Oliver, the banker, received a letter signed by the 5. "Sir, you have needlessly driven us into debt and exploited us. We no longer need you to run our money system. From here on, we will have all the money we need, with no gold, no debt, no thieves. We are establishing at once a system of social credit on the island. The national dividend will be replaced by the national debt. If you insist on being repaid, we can return all the money you gave us, but nothing more. You cannot claim what you have not made." Oliver was in despair. His empire was crumbling. The 5 were now social creditors. Money and credit were no longer a mystery. "Oh, what can I do?" Oliver thought. "Should I ask for their forgiveness, become like one of them? Oh, could I, a financier and a banker, do such a thing? No, I would rather do without without them and keep to myself." Number 19, the fraud is revealed. To avoid any future claims, the 5 men decided to have the banker sign a document attesting to the fact that he again possessed all he had when he first arrived on the island. An inventory was taken: the boat, the oars, the printing press, and the famous barrel of gold. Oliver had to reveal where he had hidden the barrel. Our boys pulled it out of the hole with considerably less respect this time around. Social credit had taught them to despise gold. Upon lifting the barrel, the prospector found it to be surprisingly light. "I doubt very much whether this barrel is full of gold," he said. Frank did not hesitate any longer. A blow of the axe and the contents of the barrel were exposed. "Gold? Not so much of a grain of it, just rocks." Our men couldn't get over it. To think that we were mesmerized by such an extent of this lowlife. How could we possibly go into rapture over the mere mention of gold? That we should have mortgaged all of our possessions for a few pieces of paper that were based on a shovelful of rocks, a thief, and a liar. To think that we have sulked at and hated one another for months for such a fraud, that devil. By the time Frank raised his axe, the banker had already fled toward the forest. Last one, number 20. No one ever heard of Oliver after his barrel was gutted and his hoax was revealed. No, he came to America. Shortly after, a ship that had run off course noticed signs of life on its uncharted island and anchored off at a short distance from shore. The men learned that the ship was en route to America, so they decided to take with them what they could carry and to return to their country. Above all, they made sure they brought back with them the first book-bound issue of the Michael Journal that had freed them from the banker's clutch and enlightened their minds with an inextinguishable light. They promised one another upon arrival to the country they would get in touch with the publishers of the Michael Journal and join a worthy cause. Yeah, obviously the Michael Journal thing all failed. I mean, that was kind of the point of this story, but isn't that a wonderful story? This is called Michael for the Triumph of the Immaculate, a journal of Catholic patriots for the social creditory monetary reform. But that story explains exactly how the monetary system works. They want you to say Democrat, Republican. That's the entire point of politics. Right? Isn't that a great story? And it happens over and over and over. The more people start becoming aware of the scam, the more the scam doesn't work. They want us to buy. Yeah, and your head filled with nonsense. But here's the thing. It's like, I'm not recommending anyone overturn the financial system. It's not possible right now. What I recommend is that you learn to live within it. Understand what it is. Understand what the mechanics are. Oh, the sun or the star, left wing, right wing. let's argue endlessly about who's the cause of all this suffering, all this financial suffering. Because people still want money. They still originally asked Oliver to print them their money. And then over time, they see the scam. But Oliver is a tool of the devil in that story. He's harnessing sin. The more sin those 5 men have, the more he can profit off them. Money is only real based on belief. Yeah, we don't have gold in Fort Knox. It's all complete nonsense. All right, Odyssey said, I sent this yesterday, but right when the show ended, look up the word niggard or niggardly. Yeah, it means cheap. I believe the original Jewish slave traders had a sense of humor and made a colorful connection with niggard and nigar. Perhaps it was in relation to how much their black slave brokers were charging. All right. The system of debt money that Oliver established on Salvation Island made the little community sink into financial debt at the rate at which the island developed and enriched itself through the work of its inhabitants. Yes, but it only works through sin. That's why when these people say, oh, if you didn't vote, you don't get to have an opinion for the next 2 years, cried the indebted slave. No, if you blame each other for the problems of the financial system, which is blatantly what it is, then you're playing right into their hand. Oh, no, but what about the child abuse, Big Bear? Yeah, the best way to stop child abuse is to be a good parent. Okay? So that's it. And it's not, oh no, but if we get Dan Crenshaw, we'll be able to keep our gun. No, that's not real. This is how they rule you, guys. Hey, everybody, do you read the Sun or the Star? Pay up. The more progress, the bigger our growth domestic product, the more money, and then the precious money. Dude, it's like a joke. Oh, so what do we do? Now I'm falling into despair again. It's unlimited. Want to know what else could have happened? Those people could have just started building shit and just not listen to Oliver anymore. Because Oliver requires armies. Oliver requires servants. And those servants have to be either ignorant or evil to work for Oliver, to enslave their fellow man. So as the ignorance fails, they have to be evil. What do we know about evil? Evil doesn't last. Evil is weak. Evil usually requires a lot of addiction and alcohol and lies to maintain. What do we know about lies and addiction? It leads to the destruction of the man doing it. It's a happy ending.